Okay, so we've got tutorial number 17, the second part of the shooting game. Final part. Before we move on to our next game, thank you everyone for bearing with me. It's been about 4 months since my last tutorial. I apologize for that. I'd like to get these going faster. I think I'm going to try to start doing some smaller things in between the larger tutorials just to keep the content coming. Um, anyway, so let's get to it. What I want to first do is talk about the new assets we have in our project file here. You'll see instantly if hopefully you're picking up from the last tutorial, because you're going to need to. Check out number 16. So there's two new text boxes on the screen. So let's start with the interface, and then we're going to get to all this, not that much, but there's new content here that I already created that's very simple. I'm going to go through some of it. I'll create probably the buttons, but the other stuff is very self-explanatory. So first, text boxes, our interface. In the first tutorial, which I have up here, ignore these two files. These are kind of my references to how I'm building the tutorial. You're just going to have these two files open. In the last tutorial, we only had our score text box. Dynamic text box called score box. So in our new tutorial, since we're adding a little more complexity, making this basically a fully rounded, extremely small game, but it has all the core elements of a self-contained game, which is a good step for us. So we're gonna add these two. So let's just go from right to left. So let's do the level text box, which same thing, just take a text box, put it on the screen here. This is actually two text boxes, the same as the one we're about to do. So this one is just pure static text. You can use whatever font you want. Try to keep the size around 30. This one is not going to have any interactive element. It's just there to display this piece of text. The box directly to the right of it, which is invisible because it's dynamic and we're going to put stuff into it. So make sure you create that second text box at the same height. I have it 7 pixels down from the bottom of the screen, the top of the screen, excuse me. Do that, name that dynamic text box level box, capital letters, no space. And that's going to display whether we're on level 1 or level 2, which we're going to be added. A second level to our game, which is going to have a different enemy AI. Basic, but different enemy AI. So that's it for that. Display the current pure text. Second text box, dynamic level box is the tag the instance name, we're going to use to communicate with our code. Level box, capital letters. So now make another two text boxes. Do this one first. Same thing as the level. It's just pure. I'm sorry, I have this set to dynamic. It should be on static. Save that. This is pure static text, not affected at all by anything. The invisible text box you're going to make right next to it, just like our level box, this one's called lives box, and it's dynamic. So that's going to display the current lives that the player has. It's going to start at 3 and go to 0 as the enemies reach the screen. To make it a fully featured game, like we want to start doing, you got to have a way to get a game over, and you got to have a way to win, which our last tutorial didn't have. It was just the structure. So now when these enemies reach the left side of the screen, I'll just show you the first one to speed things up here. Nothing's going to happen now, but when they reach this point where my mouse is here, it's going to deduct a life. Alive. So, alive, whatever. So, start with 3, it's going to go down, and when you hit 0, the game over screen is going to come up. And on the other hand, the score now is going to serve more of a purpose, because when you get to 100, when you kill 10 of them, you're going to win the level, you can beat the level, you're going to go to the next level. There'll be a second level, then you beat the second level, you win the game screen. So just 2 levels for now, but you can easily build on this, and that's why I want you to see this and see how easy it is to take a simple prototype and expand on it. And you're free to do that. Use any piece of code that I give you. If you like the code and it's working well for you, use it and build on it and see what you can do with it. That's the best way. That's the way I've learned. So again, 4 new text boxes in total. 2 are just regular text, static. 2 are dynamic. There looks like there's nothing in them because we'll be adding stuff in. This one on the left is called Lives Box. This one on the middle of the screen is called Level Box. So once you have that set up, let's get in the habit of saving. No, I already saved. So we still have that simple, very simple structure in our timeline. There's not a single piece of code, once again, in the main timeline. There's going to be one command that we're going to use in the characters timeline here. I think we already have a stop command. Yeah. So anyway, since the last tutorial, let me just check this old file. I think I had this animation here, but we weren't using it. Let me just double check that. Looks like we're not using the animation yet of the ship exploding. Yeah, we're not. So we're gonna add that in. We can talk about that right now, actually, before we go on to other stuff. So in this enemy movie clip, you should already have this set up in there. We just have a stop command preventing this crude animation that I made of the ship exploding from playing. Since the stop command's there, we never get there. And there's another command here to remove this that we're going to use now. So we're going to make a modification to the code. Before we forget, I'll go ahead and jump into that. Let's just, before you think about all this stuff that we're going to be dealing with here, let's make that one modification to this code, which if you go down to your check collisions function in our previous code, you'll see, I'm not going to talk too much about this because that's in the last tutorial, but when we detect a hit, we're removing the bullet, we're moving the enemy, and we're nulling the variables, we're nulling the objects and splicing them out of our array after we null them. So instead of removing the enemy from the screen instantly, which is blocking us from seeing the animation, we're going to just remove that, because we're not going to remove them from the screen just yet. We're instead going to say enemies E go to and play 2, frame 2. Of whatever enemy gets hit with the bullet, instead of instantly removing it as we are with the bullet and we were previously doing with the enemy, we're going to instead tell it to go to frame 2. And this is a great way to connect your content in the library, your movie clips, with code. You can direct them anywhere, you can stop them, you can play them. And it's a very simple way to have code as well in the Flash, in the FLA file. You don't, as I've said a million times, you don't want to have any sort of advanced code or any code that moves the main timeline around, which is, again, why my main timelines always have very few frames, if not one. Any code you want to be using should not be in the main timeline. It should be in a movie clip or a button or something that you create. So that's what we're doing now. This code is inside of this enemy movie clip. So since we have this stop command, that's the reason it doesn't play right off the bat. It doesn't animate right off the bat, We want to keep that there, but when this enemy gets hit with the bullet, we're telling it to go to frame 2, which then allows this animation to play. And instead of us removing the child as we were in the collision detection function, we're instead going to only remove it when the animation is done playing. And you can see that on the, what is it, frame 11 here. There's no, I've removed the layer that had the graphic on it. It's empty. And I've told it, another stop command, and I've told it movie clip parent, which means whatever movie clip is the parent of this object, which in our case is the main document class, the main movie clip, you could think of it as. There's only 2 layers here. There's only one sub-layer, I should say, under the main game. So the movie clip parent is talking to the document class, and it's saying, movie clip parent, remove child this. And that piece of code is a great way. Doesn't work great for all instances, but it's a good way to just get rid of a child kind of generically without having to change that code depending on where you've added that child, if that makes sense. It's a piece of code that can be used almost anywhere in the project as long as you understand what you're doing. You're telling the next movie clip up to remove this object, this movie clip. So it's a very easy way. It works. I've used it a million times. So let's look at that change we made and make sure that works. There you go. Now I'm in the preview player, so it'll actually run faster if you use the debug player if you want. But just for ease, I use this one. So as you can see, we're seeing that animation play the instant the bullet connects. We're going to add sound in too to make it even better. So before we get back into the code again, I just wanted to make that one change because it applies to what we're talking about. So let's talk next. What I did for level 2 of the game, we're gonna have a different enemy behavior, so we want to make the enemy look different as well, just to connect it. So I very crudely, and it looks better, smaller you can see than it does here, I very crudely took the same exact, I duplicated the enemy movie clip. I'm not going to do this because it took me a few minutes to draw this in, but you just duplicate the enemy and make sure you name it in the properties box that comes up when you create, well, you have to double click on it. When you go into there, go into the properties and name it enemy2, capital letter, no space, and export it as enemy2 instead of enemy as the previous one was. Because this is a separate, even though we use the same starting graphic, it's a completely separate movie clip independent of the last one. Although, an important point to keep in mind is, I'm not using the same source asset, but if you are, I don't want, this could be a thing that is a very annoying glitch. If you're using the same PNG image or JPEG as the base asset for 2 different movie clips, even though you duplicate that movie clip, if you deleted or modified the source PNG, it would affect them all. So just keep in mind when you're duplicating movie clips, if you're using a source image, that image is still the foundation of them both. And if you delete or alter that image, you'll delete them both. So, but in my case, I actually took this PNG and I used the break apart command. Just to show you what that is. You right click on a PNG, you hit break apart, and it just kind of turns it into something as if you would have drawn it right in Flash. It just makes it editable. So anyway, let me delete that back. Undo. There we go. So take that object and just color it green. The same, don't touch the frames, the layers. It's the same exact code. Yeah, just color it green. Or whatever color you want. That's it for that. So that asset's there. And I want to talk about, before we get to the sound, which you'll see I have these files here. Let's talk about all the visual stuff first. I'll try to make this as least confusing as I can. So next, let's go over the screens that we're going to need. No, you know what? Let's do the button. And I'm gonna delete this button that I have here. Just gonna copy paste the name so I keep that consistent. I'm gonna delete it so I can show you how this button was created, because I don't think we've gone over buttons yet. I don't know. Insert new symbol. Button. I'm going to paste that name I just copied. It's start game button. Start game button. Capital letters, no spaces as usual. You want to export it for Actionscript, and you don't have to do anything else. Once you fill in that name, it'll fill in the rest. Hit OK. It'll tell you that that class does not exist, which it shouldn't, and it's going to generate it when the SWF is exported. So, sorry if you hear that sound. It's snowing outside and there's someone shoveling outside my window. But so what we're going to do is first create a second layer, and this will just be the background color. I did a red background, so I'll do that for a square button. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to hit align. Just make sure it's centered. It's a nice tool, the align tool you can find up in the windows. So we want to lock that, and we just want to hit F5 to go to make it's F5, right? Yeah. You want to just highlight the hit states. So buttons, really quick. This is not a tutorial on buttons, so but I don't know if I went over this. Buttons have 4 different states: the up, over, down, and hit. The up is the starting state of the button. The over is when the mouse is over it. The down state is when the mouse is clicked or held down. And the hit state just defines the area of the button that can be activated. So you can make a huge button with a tiny hit state if you wanted to annoy the hell out of anyone using your game. You can also make invisible buttons, which can be used as a tool in a game for a hiding game, or some sort of a point and click mystery game. You could have hidden trigger areas, which would mean you would have a hit state, but these 3 frames would have nothing in them. So there's no graphic, but there is a hit state. So anyway, that's what they do. But this is a background layer on our, I'll call this text, because this is where we're going to write the word start. And that's it. I'm going to make this text black. Red on red is no good. And again, we're just going to center it. And what I usually do to give the user some indication that it's a button and that it works, I make the over state or the down state, but I like the over state. I make it a little different, so I'm just going to make the text, that wasn't that noticeable, I'm going to make the text a little larger when the mouse is over it, and I'm going to color it blue. So that way when the mouse goes over it, it'll grow and it'll turn blue. And we'll put the down state, I should have done this first, but I'm just going to copy the up state and the down state to be the same. The hit state is, again, it's not about the graphics, it's about the area that's activatable, if that's a word. So that's our button, just a red square in the background in the bottom layer. The upper layer just has an ordinary text box. Now, in case I confused anyone, this text box does not need to be dynamic. I'm going to turn it to static. You do not need to. No code is going to be in this timeline here. No code is related to this instance name. It's the button itself that is going to be interacting with code. So there's no code on the screen or anything like that. This is just a static text box. And it changes color and it grows in that frame. Just make sure it's all static, just so you understand. There's no code interaction in this part. The button. It's all in the button itself. So we got that done. Go back to our library. We have our start game button. It's being exported as start game button. Now we need to do our screens, and then we'll get to the sound, and then we'll be done, and we can get to the code. This is going to be real quick because I'm not going to explain this. We're adding 4 different screens to the game. I'll start with the start screen because that makes sense, right? So now we're going to take the button that we made. I forgot that I deleted it, so I actually already have a layer for it. I'm going to put it there. I'm going to align it in the center, which it pretty much already is. So all we've got on this screen, the 4 screens are, by the way, are exactly the same. They all just have a solid background and text at the top, ordinary static text to let you know what screen you're on. I didn't put a lot of effort into these because it's not important. It's just the functionality is what's important, not the visuals here. You can make them look as pretty as you want. So our start screen. Let's focus here, Matt. So we've got 3 layers. The text, again, is just the text. I wrote the greatest space shooter ever made, ever, because that's what it is. Text layer, static text, just one text box. Middle layer is the button we just made, the start game button. I just dragged to the screen and that's it. Excuse me, almost forgot. Once we drag it to the screen, I told you we're only going to be referring in code to the actual finished button, right? Not anything within the button. So we have to give this button an instance name. And I like to, whenever I'm referencing a button or a text box, I like to put underscore btn for a button and underscore txt for a text box. I didn't do that on the main screen, I know, because I just wanted to keep it more literal to what that box did. But it's a good habit to try to name things for what they are, and so when you got thousands of lines of code, which you will in a finished game, you can instantly know at least what type of object it is. So start underscore btn, all lowercase. That is going to be how we refer to this button, which is in all our different screens. So that's it for this screen. I'm just going to lock the layer. And let's go next to the start at the top here, since we didn't the first time. The game over screen, which is exactly the same, again, just a different static text box and an empty middle layer, which we will now add our button to. The same exact button. And again, we just have to remember to give it that instance name, which you can copy and paste. Oh, not that. Don't! So start button. Same thing, just a different color background, different text box. That's it. Let's go to our next level screen. This will come up when you beat the first level. Same thing. Don't forget to do the instance name. Start button. There we go. And our 4th and final screen is the screen when you beat the game. You win. Oh man, they're all blue. Well, you get the idea. The text. There's one green. So, you win. This is the screen you see when you beat level 2. And we're just including this start game button in case the player wants to play again. And you just want to allow them a way to restart the game. Put start button there. And just remember to align it. save, always save, and that's it. So we've got our 4 screens, which you're going to see how are going to be implemented into the game in a very easy way. And you're going to have the structure that you can reuse and build upon. And when you make a game, you can use a structure like this, and then kind of copy and paste it into a new game and just change the visuals, which is a great way to save a lot of time. And that's especially what classes are all about. And speaking of that, I don't want to say our next tutorial, but exact for definite, but hopefully I want to get into multi-class development. I've got a couple of comments and questions on that from different people wanting to know more about, instead of just having our one document class, main.as, having 3 classes, more. So I think in the next tutorial, since we're finishing up this project, I'm going to do a really small, another game type of demo that utilizes maybe 3 classes to get the idea of multi-class development. For example, Urban Santa, the game that our recent game that we made last year, it has maybe 40 classes in it. It's got 5 different types of enemies, 5 different types of power-ups, items. Each one of those is its own class, and the beauty of that is there's a couple things. It's really easy to keep everything small, and instead of having your document class, we're already at 150 lines. By the time we're done, it's probably going to be double. You want to break things into small pieces. It's very easy to look at, and it's very easy to find problems, is the biggest thing in them all. That's the main reason you want to use multiple classes and keep classes small and keep functions small. Because if they only do a few things or one thing, it's very easy to see where the problem is. If you have a document class that's 5,000 lines, it's very difficult to find out where the problem is. And I've been guilty of that in the past, and trying to move away from it. So anyway, let's get to the real code after we do our sounds. And this is going to take 2 seconds because I'm going to be posting the source files for this, so you could use my FLA file in its complete form and just deal with all the code and not this library stuff, which maybe is a good thing to do. But if you want to use your own graphics, as I always said, you can, and you should play around with the art side of it as well if you don't know an artist. I'm lucky that my wife is an artist. But excuse me, I need a drink. That's good liquor. So, gunfire, I have 2 sounds, one for when the gun fires and one for when the ship explodes. I'm not going to get into music, although that's the same way you would introduce music into a game. So all I did is imported 2 AIFF files. You can use MP3 files or waves. I just imported them into the library. They already have names, obviously, but I just exported them for Actionscript by going to the Properties, Actionscript tab, Export for Actionscript, and just change the name. I'm using, again, it's all that same thing I just talked about with the buttons and the text fields, including the name, the object type in the name. It really helps as the project grows. So instead of just writing gunfire, I write gunfire sound. Sometimes the names can get long, but it doesn't bother me. Gunfire sound. That's it. Export for Actionscript, gunfire sound. The class type is in Flash Media Sound. That's the package. But the class itself is just literally sound. That's the name of the class. So you're creating a new instance of the sound class that you can reuse. It's going to tell you that class doesn't exist, and it's going to create it for you when you export. Same thing with the ship. Ship explode sound, properties, export for Actionscript, ship explode sound is how it's being exported. And I'll just play these. It's gonna be, these sounds are a little loud. I don't want to get into the audio editing. Oh, that one. The other one's loud. So that's the gun firing. This is the ship exploding. There you go. So now, let me just double check. I believe I've gone over every new asset. 4 screens, 2 sounds, 1 button, and a duplicated enemy that's turned green, from red to green. And that's the only change we made with him. His visual. So, and these fonts are, I should mention, you get a message about embedding the fonts. I used a font that's not default or something like that. But anyway, if you want to use like more custom fonts that a person might not have in their browser, for example, you just want to click embed and embed the certain characters of that font in the SWF, uppercase, lowercase, numerals, punctuation. You know, those 4 are like usually the only ones you need. It increases the file size, blah blah blah, very slightly, but you have to do it to get the font, to be sure that the font you want to be in there, is included, pre-built in to the SWF. So we're done with our. I might have forgotten something. I apologize if I did, but I believe we're done with our FLA, with altering the FLA. So everything we do from here on out should be within our main.as document class. Once again, ignore these 2 files. This is just my reference rehearsal of the tutorial that I did. And this is the old FLA, which I think I can close that. So you're not going to have this backup here. But, so here we go. We need to do a whole lot of things, and I'm going to try to do this as much in order as I can. I have a little cheat sheet here for myself. Let's get going. So we need to add I think 6 or 7 new functions, and we need to add some bits of code to existing functions, as well as create new variables. So right off the bat, let's just try to take things one step at a time, and I'm going to put the sounds in because that's kind of a self-contained thing, and it's very, very easy. So what we're going to do is, I like to break my variables into boxes by section. So I'm going to just make a comment here, /sound. So we can, these are our sounds. So let's say, what did I call these? Let's keep it consistent. Gunfire, ship explode. So gunfire, it is of class type sound, which, by the way, if you're using any of the new versions of Flash, it will automatically import the classes you need into your document class. You'll see how there's no sound classes imported here. It should automatically import them once I finish writing this line of code. So it's it's not a new sound because it's a custom sound. It's a new gunfire sound, which is an instance of the sound class. So it's really the same as writing this, but this doesn't associate it with our library object like that does. And you'll notice it changes from blue to black because this is not a Flash built-in class. Remember, things that are blue are the built-in language in your text editor. Blue and purple is also obviously part of the language. But anything in black is created by you from scratch, essentially. So there's an instance of the sound class, and it's gunfire sound, referencing our exported sound. I've made folders, obviously. Gunfire sound. Bam! All right. So, gunfire sound, and we need our second one, right? The ship explode. Ship explode. Same thing. What type of object? Oh, you notice right there, it just imported this. That's the great thing about the new Flash. It didn't used to do that. Sometimes you get weird error messages. So if you're not using, I don't know where they started doing that. Maybe in CS5. I'm using again 5.5. But you're going to have to import this manually if you're using an old version, or you will get an error message. New ship explode sound is the name of our sound in our library. So that's it for the actual sound. We've now created instances of these library sounds that we have. So the other class that you have to deal with, there's a few, but we're only going to deal with these two classes for sound. There's also stuff for dealing with the volume of the sound, which I'm not going to get into because it's a little weird, and you can look it up. By the way, the name of the class to adjust the volume of your sound objects is sound transform. So just look up AS3 sound transform class, and it'll tell you how. It's very easy. You just assign a number to the volume you want it to be, and you can do fades that way. You can do some cool things if you want to mute things and stuff. So I'm going to create two sound effects channels. So these, in order to play a sound, it's like two steps. You have to import that sound, or you have to tell it what sound you're talking about and create an instance of it, which is what we're doing above, and you have to assign it a sound channel for it to play in. It's like the same thing as you would think of like an AV on a TV. You have to have those cables that tell the sound where to go, what speaker to go to, etc. So you have your sound and your sound channel, which is where you put the sound and you play it and stop it, etc. So sound effects channel, I think I just want to create this right now. And then, yeah, I'm just creating the channel. We're not putting anything in the channel yet. New sound channel. We're just going to do the same exact thing and just call it 2. So you know what? We're going to create 2. You don't need to create one for every sound in your game, but because I know these sounds are going to be playing at the same time probably, I want to create 2 independent sound channels. Same exact thing, it just channel 2. So that's all of our variable object creation for our sound. We have not told it this sound when and if when to play. So nothing will play yet. So what we're going to do is very easily implement this sound and in the 2 different functions it needs to go. Obviously, the shoot gun sound will be in the shoot bullet function when we create that bullet. So just going to do a line here, and we're just going to say SFX channel. Sorry, it's been a while since I dealt with sound. I just want to verify that I'm doing it right. Where's my function? SFX channel, yeah, exactly. Gunfire play. So SFX channel, and then the name of your sound, and the play function, which is a function that's built into the sound class. There you go. So SFX channel, gunfire play. And again, you're gonna have to reference our old tutorial if you didn't, because you're gonna need to know what's going on here. Creating the bullet, placing it, adding it to the screen, putting it in the bullets array, and playing the sound. So that we can test, and you can finally see some progress at how much into the tutorial? 39 minutes. Oh my god. So there we go. I'm going to lower the volume on that. So we don't have the exploding sound yet, but we have the gunfire sound. I can hold the button down. That gets really annoying for you. You'll want to adjust the volume of your sound effects, which you can do before you import them into Flash as well. But I think it's easier to do it within Flash. So that's that. Okay, let's pick up the pace here since I'm at 40 minutes. So our next thing we want to do is get our ship explode sound in. So where's that going to go? That's going to go in our collision detection function. So what we're going to do is we have our objects colliding. When we detect that collision, we play that sound. So let's put it right after our visuals. SFX channel 2, and use the other channel, ship explode, the name of our sound instance of our library sound. SFX channel 2, ship explode, play. Same concept, same everything. So now we got both of our sounds. Let's see if it works. There you go. Look at that sound. With the animation. Now we're looking at a real game here. Okay, you get the idea. That's all our sound. You could do music. You would put it in the same way, although you'd probably load it in the start game function. When the level was loaded, you would start your music, but then you got to worry about some other stuff, stopping it when it should and stuff. So we got our sound. Our sound is done. So now what we should get to is getting the screens in and getting everything into a full package. So it kind of loops, so to speak. You can get from screen to screen without any problem. You can beat the game and have a game over and still get back to where you started. So what we first want to do, I like to do first before moving to any other elements, moving to any other parts of the game, you got to clean up your mess, right? You got to clean up your mess before you move on to the next thing, just like in life. So what we're going to do here is create a new function that is maybe the most complicated of the new functions we're going to be adding in. It's the cleanup function. So we're going to call that function when one of our elements has detected it needs to be cleaned up. So in order to do that properly, now that I think about it, we're going to have to do these other two first. So we're going to be adding a couple of new functions into our main loop. So here we go. So let's add a check lives function, which is going to trigger the game over screen, and a check score function, which is going to trigger the win screen. So these are getting added into our enter frame loop, which runs every frame. So with these are two new functions, we're just going to put these at the bottom of our code. Check lives. And I'm just going to copy that. Check score. So since these are run every frame, they're not going to miss anything. So in order to utilize this, we're going to be creating a new variable called lives, and I'll do that in a second. And so we're going to say if lives is equal to 0, then we want to do a few things. One of them being the first step, clean up the level. And I'm just going to gray this out for now so we don't get an error if we run our file because this function doesn't exist. So we're going to clean up. I like to sort of lay out what we're going to be doing. So we're going to clean up our game first, and then I'll keep this grayed out since it doesn't exist yet. Go to game over screen. It's a long name, but it's literal, and you'll always know what it does. So you're going to clean up the game, which is removing everything from the screen and kind of resetting things, and go to the game over screen. And the same concept here, although it's dealing with the score. So if score is greater than or equal to, in case two ships get hit at once, you wouldn't want to just do equal to, because it might end up being 110. Keep that in mind with things that can get wonky. So greater than or equal to 100, which would be hitting 10 of the ships, you're going to, again, clean up first, and then go to, instead of the game over screen, go to win screen. If we're going to put, actually I should pre-build this in, we're going to put an if statement in here. We always clean up, so that won't go inside the if statement, but if another variable we're going to create, I'm going to do this right now so you understand what's going on, if current level equals 1, we're not going to go to the win screen, we're going to go to the next level screen, which we created before again. Else, meaning if the current level is anything other than 1, we're going to be going to the win screen. And this will all be uncommented out. I'll remove these comment outs as soon as we create. Whoops. So there we go. So we have, I know you're like, what is lives? What is current level? The score, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be lowercase. The score variable we already created. We're going to create these two variables now so you understand what these functions are referencing. So we've got our score. I like to use. So we're going to do our lives. Lives equals 3, because that's what it starts as. It's going to go down when the enemies reach the left side of the screen. So it's your job to defend that left side of the screen. So variable lives equals 3, and also a current level. No space, capital letters. I like to make my document class variables have uppercase letters. Most of the time the score, don't worry about that. But it helps differentiate when you get multiple classes. Current level equals 1. It starts as 1. It'll get changed to 2 if you beat the level, and it'll get changed back to 1 if you get a game over, or if you beat the game and reset it. So we got to remember to do those things. Easy to forget. So these two new, again, they're global variables because they're not inside of a function. These are document class. They're as global as they get. You can access these anywhere inside of a function, which is what we're doing. So that's what these if statements are referencing, these two functions. We check every frame. We're looking when the game's running. We're looking at if that lives gets down to 0, clean up the screen and go to the game over screen. If that score gets greater than or equal to 100, clean up the screen, which will be resetting the score back to 0, by the way. But we clean it up and then look at that current level variable. If it's 1, go to the next level screen. If else, meaning anything other than 1, go to the win screen. And that's how you can restart the game if you want. That's that last screen. So those are two new functions of the ones we're going to be creating. Those are simple ones. So now that we've done that, let's create these screens, and I think we'll do the cleanup later on, a little bit later on, so I can get the structure there for you. It'll be a little glitchy at first. So let's write these functions, these different screens we want to go to. And we're going to need a start screen as well. We're going to need to add in. So public function, let's just do all these ones that we created. Go to game over screen. There's a good trick in here that I think his name was Jody Hall. You look up his Flash stuff, flashconnection.com or something like that. I'm not fully utilizing this trick, but it's a good way to change screens very easily. Go to game over screen. I think we're gonna need all four. So just making this easy, copying. Go to next level screen. Go to win screen and go to start screen. Oh, you know what? We don't need that actually. What time? I don't think we need that. So go to game over screen, go to level screen. There's nothing in here now. I'm just creating these functions so we can ungray out these since these actually exist. Keep the cleanup grayed out now because it doesn't exist. So let's take our screens that we made in our library and put them into the game. So again, we have our four screens. They're, other than the text and the background color in this one, they're exactly the same. That start button is the same object. We're telling it to do different things depending on what parent movie clip it's in. What screen that start button is in will determine its functionality, which is a good way to reuse and think about how you can use the same movie clip assets in different ways. So we're just going to start with one first. None of this is going to work without the cleanup. Keep in mind, it's not going to work properly. But we're going to do the game over screen first because that at least will take us. Should take us there. So let's do the game over screen first. So what we want to do is let's create those instances for all four screens. And again, I'm just going to do this. We'll do it under the sound. Screens. Make a new section in your global variables here. It just helps keep things organized. So let's do game over. Game over screen. And again, we can see the names of them over here. The name of the class, the custom class that we created, equals game over screen, new, game over screen. Same thing for all four. Let's just say next screen, next level. Oops. Next level screen, new, next level screen, start screen, start screen. Start screen. I like to find little ways to annoy you by just saying whatever I'm thinking. So, one more. Win screen. Save. and we've got our four instances of our screen movie clips that we're going to be, taking full screen as a transition element to and from the levels, the game over screen, etc. So we got those. Let's first utilize the game over screen, which I'm just going to copy this now because it game over screen. That's all lowercase, one word. That's how we will first. I almost forgot the part that makes this easier is we create a variable called current screen, which I'm just going to type as a movie clip. I'm not going to associate anything with this variable yet. I'm just going to tell Flash I'm going to type it, which gives you better performance, and you should always get in the habit of, even in other languages that don't always require it. Type it as a movie clip. Current screen, it's a movie clip. It doesn't know what movie clip yet. That's gonna hold whatever the current screen is, and it makes it very easy to add and remove. It's a good trick. So we're gonna first position our game over screen, then we're gonna put it in this variable current screen, so we can then remove it by just saying current screen. So game over screen, we're gonna first position it here when it's called up. Again, a good trick to keep your code more adaptable to when you're changing screen sizes and stuff is to use these stage width and stage height properties that I think I've gone over before. And I'm just multiplying it by ×5, which puts it in the center. Now that we've positioned that, we add it to the screen, since we haven't done that yet. And then we say current screen equals game over screen. So now we can stop referring to it by its unique name and refer to it by a generic name until we need to put something else into that generic placeholder, current screen. So let's see what happens. Honestly, I'm got to make sure I'm not forgetting a step here. So let's see what happens when I load this up. So when our lives gets to 0, what am I talking about? I can't test this yet. We haven't told it how to knock our lives down, so it'll never get to 0. We also have to update the UI. I'm sorry. I'm moving a little slow in the head today. So we got to do two things before this is going to work, at least. So in our check collisions function, I'm sorry, not in our check collisions function, in our move enemies function, when the enemy moves off screen and we were removing them from the screen, we also want to reduce the lives variable by 1, right? So it actually goes down and penalizes you from letting the enemy reach the edge of the screen. So once we remove them from the screen, once we do all the visual things here, I have the trace statement there just so you can see what's going on. But what we're going to do is that lives variable at the top of our document class, we're just going to say lives minus equals 1. And then we're going to create a function I forgot I needed now. I thought I could do it later, but we do need it now. The update UI function, which I'm not going to gray out because we're going to write it right now. But what's the point of, you got to remember, Actionscript is weird. I don't want to digress on this too much because the tutorial is going long, but Actionscript is unique to a lot of languages like Java, for example. I know you're like, the updating of the screen is sort of connected to the background code, but it's sort of not in ActionScript. Whereas in Java, it's like you update something. It's clear separation between updating the code and updating the screen. It's like two separate things. But ActionScript sort of meshes the two together. So here, if we didn't update the UI, meaning refresh the value that's in that text box, the game would be working properly under the hood, but you would never know that the lives were going down because you weren't telling the text box, hey, look at this lives variable now that I've changed it. So anytime you change a UI element, you got to make sure that you're updating that to display the real lives number, not the old one. So, anywho, lives minus equals 1. You know what? We have to, just for neatness sake, let's make sure the lives is not already 0. If lives is greater than 0, that will probably prevent a glitch. If lives is greater than 0, then minus it by 1. And why not just, again, for neatness sake, throw our update UI call in there. So if that function doesn't exist, we're going to write it. Let's put that down here. Public function update UI. Excuse me. Ovid void